So let's break this down. I come from the school of Amati, who is the teacher of Guarneri Stradivarius. And the way I got into this is I took my first guitar apart to figure out how it worked. And came naturally to me because my father was a commercial artist. Before franchises, he decorated shops, right? You didn't get your signage and stuff from the home company. You made it yourself, or you hired my father to do it. So he worked in plastic, wood, so on and so on. That was not unusual for me to take something apart. My wonderful mom was a rock star reference librarian. She did a lot of research for writers. And when she saw I'd taken my guitar apart, she said, well, let's get the books that show you how to put this back together. And at this time, we're pre-video. There was nothing in print on steel string guitar making, and there was precious little on classicals. I think Irving Sloane's classical guitar in the Whole Earth catalog was the only thing out. So what she could find was a breadth of mostly essays and writing about the violin, how it worked. These guys kept secrets, so it was a lot of speculation. But the theme there was as to how to make something sound consistent and excellent. And think of this, a violin is an incredible machine. It's this little tiny stringed instrument that projects through a really raucous orchestra, and it goes all the way to the back of the concert hall. That's pretty magic. And there's a lot of things that go into that to give it that power, but there's also a traditional sound that you got to nail to be taken seriously in that. So learning through the violin building how to be consistent also taught me how to be adaptive and make changes for people and their instruments. So from the very beginning of my career in the late 60s and continuing with Santa Cruz Guitar Company, we were a custom shop and we're building for people. So those components of sound are twofold. There's the subjective, which is your choices, right? Anything on your sound system that allows you to change it, there's no right or wrong, or they wouldn't give you knobs and sliders to move it around. You make the choice of what's right. That would be EQ, how loud the bass and treble is, presence, tone, and these are a little harder, but I'll explain them in the guitar realm. Again, you make the choice. Nobody on the internet or your teacher or your significant other can tell you what's right. You choose those. But then there's the stuff that is objective that everybody wants in a musical instrument like a guitar or a piano. That is sustain, that it lasts a long time, and that it's rich, full, colorful, and inspires you to be creative. That's the good one that you're looking for. You know the phenomena of, let's say we want to buy a Martin D28. You're advised to go to as many stores as you can, play as many as you can, and get the good one, right? Well, what's that all about? Can't they just measure it and repeat it? That's actually where science has gone astray in trying to duplicate the magic of a Stradivari violin, that the dimensions contain the secret. And the thing is, it's absolutely wrong. And science has yet to duplicate the sound of a Stradivarius. What the secret of Stradivari is instead of making the instrument out of a formula of dimensions, getting all the sizes right, each of those components is tuned to a frequency that's complementary to the rest of the instrument. So the instrument's built in harmony with itself like a chord on a piano. Let me pause here a little bit because this is critical. When you take a single note, it's a frequency, it rings clear, it lasts. It's not very complex because it's just that one note, a note on a piano. When you pick two notes, it depends. Is this within music theory where we're picking two notes that have complementary wavelengths, 2, 3, 5 notes that are in harmony are wavelengths that work together, and combined they develop overtones, they create sustain, and you get a rich, full sound that can move you to go out and march in the street or fall in love, right? If you take 5 notes at random, like throwing rocks at a piano blindfolded, you could get anything. Mostly noise, vibrational links that cancel each other out quickly. So there's not sustain, there's not a development of overtones, there's just noise. So when we build a guitar out of size components, you know, we're going to make the top this size, the back this size, and so forth, the braces this size. Because wood isn't homogeneous like metal, all those notes are going to be random. So the most carefully constructed, precise replica of a Stradivarius violin is going to be throwing rocks at a piano and not knowing what you're going to get. If you throw enough rocks at a piano for long enough, you'll get a chord every once in a while, right? And that's why we experience the guitar in a store or at a festival that people say, oh, well, you got to hear that D28. It's awesome. And it is. And the thing is it happened to have enough notes come together that made it sustain and sound great. And I have to go a little bit deeper here. In the violin tradition, you know, let's say one guy is voicing, tuning this instrument as it's built, and ends up with an instrument in tune with itself. That harmony creates sustain, overtones. You get a good one. Costs a lot of money to get somebody to do that. We're a society that values low price, and we respect mass production in our automobiles, household appliances, our clothes, and also our guitars. So to get a reasonably priced guitar, you can't have somebody voicing and tuning it. It's made like an automobile or a chair. These dimensions are precisely followed. Those components will fit into fixtures that were specially designed to accelerate the process, and you can get a guitar done quicker at a lower price, and we're all happy because, you know, guitars are loud enough, you can write a song and change the world, right? You'll get what you want. But it's not going to be that one unless you play a lot of them and find the one where enough rocks were thrown at the piano that it was in tune. Now that's a mouthful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the secret of the of Stradivarius, of how the mandolins were made. And the reason it's not more common is it's god awfully expensive to do that, and the training to get a person to understand that and do it is hard to come by. And it's taken us the better part of 50 years to put that into practice in what we do. So if it's not bragging about Santa Cruz being better, but it's certainly more complex, and the thing is it's certain. Any instrument you play here is going to be, oh, that's the one. But remember, there's also the subjective things that you want personally. How much bass or treble, the tone, and I'm going to describe those a little bit, but let's stick on this point. You can make a really, really good guitar intentionally by just doing it right, getting the right materials, tuning and voicing it, and you'll have what you want.
Richard, can I interject? Because what
are you talking about?
No, I think that just, I wish we could show them what you have showed me and probably a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Richard has this wonderful display in the shop where he has a guitar top that is a fine piece of wood and all the normal braces and normal craftsmanship, but that is built to dimensions, right? Because that's how it starts. It starts out as it's just measurements.
Right.
And it's glued together, and then from there it's scalloped, and it's I don't know what do you even call it when you grade it, you fine tune the thickness of the top. Is there a name for that?
Well, actually what we're doing is we're tuning it unto itself. So you've probably heard about tap tuning and so forth. It's two-part. One is tuning the components unto themselves to get sustained overtones, good sound. And the other one is manipulating the EQ, when we call that voicing. We're voicing for a custom sound for a player. You're playing bluegrass, you want a predominant bass. You're a classical player or a fingerstyle jazz, you'd hate that. You want each note to be about the equal amplitude so you as a player could choose. So that's what we're doing. And those demo pieces are probably on a UPS truck around the corner here. Well, I should have been here yesterday.
Well, I'd love, because what you hear is you can hold up, a lot of you may have done this, you can hold up a piece of wood and tap it and hear the resonance of the wood. And when you hold up that top that they've built, before they've done whatever, it's like when you start talking about that, to me it just sort of sounds like, wow, that sounds like magic.
It sounds metaphysical,
but it works because you tap on that top and it sounds like, okay, it sounds like a piece of wood, this is fine. And then you pick up the one that they've done this fine tuning on, and you tap it, and it's like a bell.
It's music.
It
Yeah.
rings, and you realize, wow, like I never would have, and I wouldn't have appreciated how good it sounded if I had, because I would never have imagined that a top would sound like that until you actually hold it and tap on it and realize, wow, okay, that's the work that you're
Thanks,
doing.
that's beautiful. And I wish I had this demo because it's a really great attention-seeking device. It's like that one people are like, and then you hear the one that's tuned,
Yeah.
and it's like music.
Yeah.
So we get a little bit more complicated here, so bear with me. Now we have a top, and we have harmony within it. So we know it's going to sound great. It's going to sustain, it's going to develop overtones, it's going to inspire you to write a song, march in the street, fall in love, whatever, right? Instead of the randomness where it's going to be like kind of knocking on a door. And you can write a nice song, but it's not inspiring. You know, a chord played on a grand piano that fills a concert hall can bring people to tears. The same amount of notes that aren't in tune is just a distraction and noise, right? So there's nothing really metaphysical about this. This is how we respond to things. So let's drill one step deeper. Now we have a top that has the sound that we want. But also in this, we're going to put these subjective choices for the player we're building for. And that player, we know not by them telling us, by listening to their music, that they want a pretty even EQ with maybe a little predominant bass. They're not a bluegrass player, they're not a classical player. They want to do some single note lead and some strumming. They need kind of a nice in-between. So how we shape the braces allows us to move the EQ just like sliders on your graphic equalizer. So I imagine most of you have heard the term scallop braces, which is what Martin did pre-World War II. They scalloped the braces. And by that manipulation of the mass, you get a guitar with a real predominant bass. Good for some people, awful for others. Later on, Martin, for durability after World War II, huge demand, they stopped taking that scallop out of the middle and they brought it out and tapered it, made the garment much stronger, but it also put stiffness in a place that reduced the bass and raised the treble. So those guitars are notoriously more even balanced. Great for some people, but a lot of people want that vintage sound because they want the big predominant bass. So both how we shape the braces and where we put them can give us absolute control over the EQ of this guitar, and we've got one personal choice. There's another personal choice. How bright and clear or how warm and blended do you want your instrument? I call that tone. And it's a scale. If you had a little series of bells, the bright clear one's made out of silver and it's really articulate, very distinct. And the other end of the scale is bronze and it's warm, it's blended, you could call it friendly, right? And depending on your style of playing, there's a tone on that scale that'll be right for you. Bluegrass traditionally was a warmer, more blended tone, and that's why Indian rosewood and Sitka spruce became the standard on most every guitar because it gave you that warm kind of forgiving sound. But then people like Dan Creary, Doc Watts, and Tony Rice came on the scene and started playing the fiddle leads on the guitar rather than the rhythm. And now we need a little more articulate, clear sound, and people started to use woods like Adirondack spruce that gave a clearer, brighter tone, and you could hear those single leads and those notes separately. So I'll give another example. We worked with Eric Skye, who's a remarkable fingerstyle jazz player. He wants you to be able to hear every note he plays clearly, separately, and all the nuance that he's putting into it. And for that, we make the back and sides out of cocobolo, which is a bright, clear sound, much like Brazilian rosewood. And the top is Adirondack spruce from our northeast mountains. And the weight to strength ratio in these different woods will ring a different scale of bells from bright to dark. They're not better or worse, but they'll be right for you. Again, subjective. I don't want everybody to hear every note when I play, I fancy myself a singer-songwriter, and I want people to hear my brilliant lyrics, and I want them to have the guitar be an accompaniment and not try to upstage me. So I'm doing a lot of rhythm and strumming, and occasionally some single-line leads. So you don't have to know this all, but that's part of the service I do when I'm talking to someone about a custom guitar. They don't know these terms, they don't know acoustic physics, and they don't have to. I can listen to the guitar somebody's playing and the style they're playing and make these recommendations. The best way to communicate with your luthier is to start with a guitar that you already have. You're going to like some things, not like others. You're going to want more of something, less of another. And a knowledgeable luthier that can ensure they'll get what you want can work with that. You don't have to know what your EQ is or your tone is. They can determine that for you. But for the case of this, I want you to understand what's behind that. So now we've talked EQ, how much bass versus treble, and we talked tone, how bright or dark. And the tone comes from the choices of wood. And this is a great internet myth buster. The woods have nothing to do with the relative volume of bass, treble, and mid-range. Brazilian rosewood guitar is not more bassy than a maple guitar, but the tone is really different, bright to dark. Again, to get that EQ change is how we manipulate the wood. So now we're going to throw a third one in here, and that is presence. And let's try something, James.
Yeah.
You can just do a few chords, a little run, not too long, and play it for people. And then let's not use the mic.
Okay, no mic.
And then you're going to turn around and play it that direction, and I'm going to call that the present. Where's the sound going? All right? So let's hear it.
Okay.
Cool. So there was a difference in volume, right? It sounded louder when he played it towards you, and it didn't quite sound loud the other direction. Everything else was the same. The EQ was the same, the tone was the same guitar, same sound, but when you strum a guitar, literally, it's like a radiating ball. The energy, the sound goes everywhere, right? The luthier has the choice to direct that, and the company has a choice to direct that. If you were making 1 million guitars a year, like Samick or Yamaha, remember they have to sell that guitar in concept before somebody plays it. And who are they trying to impress when they do play it? Not the audience. They need to impress the person with a credit card in their pocket that's going to make this. So it truly should sound the biggest right here to the player, not to the audience. So this was a cheap trick to show you what happens if he turns around and shoots the sound the other way. But in building an instrument, we take from the violin tradition. How do you get this violin to send its energy projected to the audience and not waste a smidgen on what sounds like behind the violin? Who cares? You want everything to go forward. So there's a couple of tricks to do that. One of them is the mass in the neck will change the projection of the guitar. And I also have this sample, but it didn't arrive. If I had James play his guitar and you listen to it, and then I patted a C-clamp and clapped it on the peg head, the guitar would sound maybe 50% louder. All of a sudden, it's just huge. The guitar didn't get louder. The energy came directly from you rather than chimneying up the neck.
So it's louder, but the tone is going to change too, right?
Well, that, for the sake of argument, yes, and we could have some fun with that, but I'm going to shut you down because I get confused. Let me stick with this part of it and
Sorry,
say,
Richard.
Yeah, it could change the tone because you're adding a different medium material to it. But the thing is, in the first, the neck is accepting energy from the strings. It's part of the resonant surface, and you're getting a more open, airy ambience, which is great. If you're playing acoustically amongst friends or even a microphone, you'll get a more like, let's say, folky blues style sound. If you wanted to play to an audience where you cut through the other instruments and really laser focus, a heavier neck will block that vibration, and now the energy comes out the sound hole or the F-holes. So the jazz archtop guitar was designed originally to be a rhythm instrument. Each chord, each note was a different chord as people comped, and the neck was made out of heavy maple. The peg heads were comically big, and they used really heavy gears. And that allowed the archtop to be percussive and project really, really efficiently. And let's take another counterpart. We're playing a singer-songwriter, vocal accompaniment, folky thing. We want something more open and airy and ambient. The neck is mahogany. It's 12 frets to the body, meaning less material. It's a slotted peg head, and the tuners are open back. They're light. Now a good portion of the energy is transferring into the neck, and that becomes part of the resonating surface, and we're getting this big, open, airy sound. You don't got to remember any of this, mind you, right? But when you're thinking about getting a guitar for you, why not get not only the sound that you want, but the components of sound you want, the projection that you want, the decorative features you want, the feel of the neck, and on and on and on. And to find that an existing guitar can happen, you just got to go look for it, right? So the point here is, what I'm describing is what Santa Cruz does and follows the tradition of the violin makers. They weren't trying to please one player. They were trying to get a real consistent sound. We're trying to get that consistent sound and also add these extra subjective personal choices. Did you stay with me on that? That's a lot of information, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that projection isn't necessarily a good thing. Again, that would be subjective too. Like, you might say, oh, a great instrument should project, but it maybe if you're going to perform acoustically, that would be the most important thing. But if your main use of the instrument is sitting on your couch playing it, then it actually matters more what it sounds like up here, right?
Yeah, there's very few better or worses here. They're really choices. Like when you talk about flavors and colors, you could argue to your death which better or worse, but that's not the point. They'll be individual for what we do. And knowing that when we're building an instrument for somebody, we can manipulate those personal choices, but we always want to get those fundamentals, which are what a good guitar or a good piano or a good banjo has, which is sustained complexity of overtones, rich, full of fidelity, and the tone, how bright or dark you want it. Also, you want a neck that feels right, a string spacing that's correct, and your doggy engraved on the heel cap of the guitar. Right? Hard to go out and find that. So I'm going to be really cautious here. I'm going to tell you that Larry and Debbie have curated a selection of guitars here that it's unlikely that you couldn't find most everything you want if you played all of these instruments, and in a lot of different price ranges. And if you go through them, even the same brand of same model, two of them, one's going to sound better than the other. So take your time, you can find that. If you can't, heaven's sakes, don't walk out the door. They know how to work with us, and as I was explaining today, I do an excellent imitation of being a really busy guy, but I'm just killing time in between the chance to talk about guitars.
Now, Richard, with a custom guitar, there's no extra cost for a custom order, is that right?
Well, it really, we'll break this down, and here's a good place to go, this better or worse. Indian rosewood, Brazilian rosewood. The difference in cost is stunning, you know. Maybe we can buy an Indian set today for under $100, right? And for Brazilian, we're going to pay whatever the market rate is for that, $900, $1,200, $2,500 for that. But that's not proportionate to the quality of the sound, but it is proportionate to the quantity of what you get from it. But Brazilian rosewood is an interesting phenomenon. It's not pretty till it's dead, so it doesn't come from the living tree, and it's been popular ever since the Spanish went in and, what's the polite word, colonized South America, and began to export these priceless resources to Europe. And so Brazilian rosewood became the thing for paneling in your palace, the pipe you smoked out of, chopsticks, what furniture. It was beautiful stuff. And it was rare, because you didn't go cut a tree, you had to go look around and find it. So the rarity of it and the beauty of it, of course, raised the price.
Right.
As people begin to use more and more of it, it became more scarce, more desirable, and the price went up. We've done that for 200 years, and now we're at a place where we pay really dearly for Brazilian rosewood. And, you know, I'm an old guy. I've been at this a long time, and I've developed really beautiful relationships, and we can get that stuff. Not on demand, it finds me, but we can find that. But I can't tell you we can make you a better guitar because it's Brazilian versus Indian or Cocobolo or something else. We'll talk about your sound and how to match you up the best. When we talk about wood sounds, we're talking generics. A Brazilian rosewood tree that grows at a lower elevation, close to a water source, will grow quickly, less dense, and it'll sound more like an old-growth Indian rosewood than it will other Brazilian. So really, when it comes to the sound of this, there's two things. You want an expert that's building your guitar that can give you what you want. But also in Brazilian, there's another thing. There's the gratification of having something exceptionally beautiful, something rare, and something that not only will hold its value, but probably increase its value. And for a lot of us, we don't want to think about that, right? Our guitars are pal for life. We never think of selling it. But it's good to know you made a nice decision in your price. So that goes through all the woods. And our website goes over this. I won't spend the time now. But there's a scale of bright to dark in back and side wood. There's also in top wood. And when you combine the two, you can either amplify a brightness or a darkness. So let's say I talked about Indian rosewood, Sitka spruce. Forever, that was the combination. And it was a warmer, nice, rounder sound that everybody wanted. As people got more sophisticated, something like Adirondack or European spruce, Cocobolo, Brazilian, are the ones that work well for that. So that's part of our color palette in building a custom guitar to get you what you want in that regard. So there's, again, on our website, or you can call me, we can talk about those things. And most importantly is please don't get intimidated by this volume of knowledge here, because I spent, my whole adult life developing this expertise, validating it, vetting it, and I know I can build the guitar that's right for you and your sound. That's what Santa Cruz does. And again, it doesn't make us better, but we're knowledgeable and we can put the time in to pull that off and get it for you. And I said this earlier, they're out of my price range. I'm a guitar maker. I don't make enough to buy a lot of Santa Cruz guitars. But that's not because we charge too much. It's because our economy has transmorgified from a time when we all paid according to how long it took to do something by hand. To make your wagon wheel, to make your wood stove, your chimney, your house. It just took that much time, and you paid your rent and your groceries on that scale. When we got into modernization, mass production, and the cost of consumer goods plummeted, that handwork became almost unaffordable. But in our case, that's the only way you can do it. It really is not scalable in a factory.
Well, it makes such a difference, too. So you've mentioned twice that Sitka and Indian is a very common wood combination, and it has sort of a warm tonality. Mm-hmm. So that's what this is. This is a Sitka Indian OM. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is a warm guitar at all. If it were a really warm guitar, I probably wouldn't love it because it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for brightness and clarity to the point where I think a lot of people would find this guitar to be too bright.
Thank you.
I mean, it just depends on how you play it. I like to have a very bright guitar because I feel like I can use technique to make the guitar sound warmer, but if the guitar doesn't have brightness, I can't find it in the guitar. But not everybody's looking for that. If you hit this guitar hard with sort of loud strumming, to me, this is that's a little bit harsh. Like if I played like that, I wouldn't like this guitar. And so it really depends on what you're looking for. But so it's interesting. I'm curious, what you would call that EQ, right? So
well, EQ is bass versus treble. Tone is bright versus dark. And they really get confused. Mm-hmm. And that's why some people say, oh, I love the bass of Brazilian. No, it's not the bass. It's the warmth, right? So here's what's happening with this guitar. I remember that spruce. He came from Alfie Hughes, Rainbow Hughes, which is a crazy wood guy in British Columbia.
You never told me this story.
Yeah,
This is great.
and we bought a log from him, and we went through it probably from 88 to 90. And your guitar, I think, is 88.
Yeah, this is 90.
90, okay,
Yeah,
right
yeah,
in that
yeah.
range. And we used it for a long time. And it was, for Sitka, it had a much higher weight to strength ratio. It sounded more like Adirondack and European spruce than it did Sitka. Also, this Indian rosewood on yours is pretty unique. I just bought a board when I went to buy this Brazilian, and I had no idea that I'd buy Indian rosewood, but I looked at it and I went, I haven't seen that in years. The tightness of the grain, it grew really slow, and that has a tone much more like Brazilian than a lot of Brazilian that's on the market today. So there's an important thing. Just because it's called Indian and Sitka isn't an absolute, and that's why you want to be working in the hands of a knowledgeable luthier, and I would judge consistency more than I would judge any particular guitar for its sound in that regard. So yours is unique.
So if
You're absolutely right.
someone were coming to you and saying that they wanted a particular sound, you might not just direct them to a particular wood combination. You might say,
That's
I have
absolutely
some
right.
particular Indian rosewood that would be good for this guitar.
Well, here's my job. Somebody comes to me and they've read something on the internet and say, I want a guitar out of walnut and Adirondack because I heard that's the best, combination. And I don't mean to dismiss it, make a great sounding guitar. What I'm going to ask is, what are you hoping to achieve by that? Listen to you play and so forth. And I'd be of best service to you to explain what you're looking for isn't commonly found in those woods. This would be a better combination of wood to get the sound you're looking for. Likewise, if somebody's asking for a particular sound, I'll recommend a wood to that. So, of course, the customer's always right, and I honor that. But the same thing, our reputation is to guarantee the sound of a guitar, which is unheard of. Can you imagine a big mass-producing company guaranteeing the sound of their guitar? But we do. When we build a custom guitar, we guarantee the sound. So I have to be positive I understand what this person wants, and we can deliver it. And it's best to explain that in the beginning. And sometimes we lose the sale, but that's better. It's better to have somebody go disappointed that we won't build the wood we want, that they want, but that's because they won't get the sound they want. Otherwise, it's easy.
Yeah.